Okay, now that we're ready, I'm going to call a meeting of the April the 27th, 2020 meeting, City Council meeting to order. And we are going to do, Chuck Stites, and thank you for commenting last time, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. So if you are all ready, we'll start the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. So we will now have a moment of silence. Thank you all, and we will begin with item number 1, and that's to approve the minutes from the April 13th, 2020 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes with a correction from the last meeting. My concern should have read from the county health official, not law enforcement.
I second with the.
Okay, we have a motion and a second with a correction. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Kahar?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item will be the statement of the bills paid in an amount of $152,119.85.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the statement of bills at $152,119.85.
Second, this is Shriver.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the statement of the bills paid. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Kahar?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Mike, you have an announcement to make?
Yes, sir. I would recommend, and I don't believe we need any formal action if the council is in consensus, but that we move our executive session to be the very last item after both staff comments and council comments. It's easier for any listeners on the call, and Zach can go over what we're going to do, but we basically have to pause the meeting during that time. We'll probably just ask for 30 minutes so we don't have to kind of come out and go back in. We do not anticipate there will be any actions necessary by the council. Obviously, if somebody wishes to stay on the call afterwards, they can do that. Again, Zach can explain that process, but I think it would be just best on this particular meeting, make it flow a little bit easier, and we'll just do that as the very last item. So, Mayor, if that's acceptable, that is what we would propose. And
Okay, do we have any opposition to that change? If not, we will then have the recess, or not the executive session after the council and mayor comments at the end of the meeting. Thank you, Mike.
And Zach, could you just go over briefly how that will work for those that are on the call that both will be in the executive session and those that won't be able to be in the executive session? Can you just briefly explain what we'll be doing?
Yes, sir. So for the people who are going to be in on the executive session, which would be the elected officials, myself, the city manager, and then the legal counsel involved, they don't need to do anything. They just need to sit tight. For everybody else, so for the other department heads, for the folks listening in or participating via the web browser, you will be dismissed from the meeting, and I will do that, so you don't need to do any action. But you'll be dismissed from the meeting, and then the meeting will at that point be locked. So if you want to hop back on and listen in after the executive session for anything that would come up afterwards, all you would need to do is log in or call in the same manner that you did before. You will be placed on a hold until the meeting is unlocked and the executive session is adjourned. And at that point, I will unlock the meeting, and then you will automatically rejoin the call to hear the last part of that meeting. But like Mike said, we don't anticipate any action coming out of there. But in case you wanted to follow along the meeting to its conclusion, you'll be dismissed at the time the executive session is called. The meeting will be locked. If you want to rejoin, just call in the same manner that you did before, and you'll be placed on a hold until the meeting is unlocked and the executive session is adjourned.
Thank you, Zach. So if you would now, if there are no more questions, Zach, if you would now go ahead and read the request or comment.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to read these in the order that they were submitted. One is from Connie Henry, 1123 South 102nd Terrace. As a resident of Edwardsville, I am greatly concerned at the lack of work being completed in the Edwardsville Cemetery. I understand that the Public Works Director position and the additional Public Works Worker position has not been filled. I understand that the coronavirus has made it difficult to conduct meetings. What I don't understand is why work has not been completed in the cemetery. It is easy to practice social distancing in open air. Why aren't the leaves removed? Why hasn't the brush pile been burned? Why haven't the ornamental grasses been cut down? Why haven't the peonies been raked and weeded? Why hasn't the broken trucking system on the flagpole been repaired? These are not beautification issues. These are tasks which lie in the scope of the public works staff's responsibilities. I request a full explanation dealing with the reasons why nothing is happening in the cemetery. The other comment that was submitted after the call for comments was from a Thurman Gardner. Mr. Gardner did not provide his email address, or excuse me, his physical address. But Mr. Gardner's comments are, to our mayor, city council, and those serving with you, I just want to say a simple thank you for your steadfast work during this challenging time. You have managed to keep the wheels on the bus moving forward despite the orders to shelter in place. Thank you for your creative leadership, and thank you for executing your duties with grace and class. You represent our community very well. Those are the only two comments submitted in response to the call.
Okay, Zach, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on now to the first item is a discussion of MARC call for projects for the federal fiscal year 2023-24.
Mayor, before we go to that, we do have a little update on the cemetery that we had already prepared prior to the comments. So
okay, go ahead.
Highlight those. There have been a couple of the council members that also just asked for some updates on the staffing, et cetera. So thought this would be a good time to do that. So there was a mention about the flagpole, I think, in that public comment. The flagpole was repaired. So the reason that the flag couldn't be raised or lowered was because it was damaged at the top where the rope goes through, and so those parts had to be ordered. And then the fire department had already ordered the flag. They were waiting on those. Once those were received and it was safe to do so, they got our aerial ladder truck out and corrected that. So you see a picture there in the background showing the flag taken this weekend at the cemetery. It is working and functioning as it's supposed to. So if you want to go to the next slide here, just other work that's been done at the cemetery. It is correct, we have not hired the full-time position. We have not filled the Public Works Director, though we hope to do that soon on the Public Works Director. What we have done is our former full-time person who left for nursing school has stayed on in a part-time position. So one of his duties has been weekly work at the cemetery, generally doing cleanup work. So if there's brush, if there's other things that, pick up sticks, trash, all those kind of things has been done. We did brought in topsoil. So instead of just using the clay that had been there in the past, we brought topsoil in, so we have it stockpiled. He has leveled out 8 graves There are some new ones there, but he's leveled those out. He seeded them, put topsoil on them. We've taken off, truckload worth of branches have been picked up. There is a pile there that will be burned when it's appropriate to do so. I believe we may be we had been in a no burn situation. We did not want to do burning while we were still dealing with the COVID crisis. So we don't want to add to the potential workloads that might happen. The mowing started through the contractor in the first part of April. I think we all know that rain has been up and down. So those things have all been done. The other work, some of it we need directions from the new community or the cemetery parks and public spaces board. As you know, I believe they met once since they were formed. I know they're ready to get after it. They had planned on a cleanup day in May to coincide with the city cleanup day, and that's probably going to be delayed. But we do have a person there each week. If there's specific items that the board directs us, or if there's other things, we'll certainly address that. We don't claim to be landscapers, or though I do know one of the things the board wants to do is put together a formal landscape plan. So going forward, we all know what areas should be maintained, how they should be maintained, what kind of plants should be there, are they perennials, annuals, things of that nature. And that was one of the first items that the board spoke about. So we'll continue to work on those. The leaves have been there for a long time. Some of the fencing has been discussed by the former cemetery board and its members. So we know these are needs. Some of them are longer term, and that is another project that they're doing, is they're taking the current fund balance in the cemetery and putting together kind of a capital plan, if you want to call it, to decide where best to spend those dollars. I want to say it's approximately $60,000, but whether it's sealing roads, whether it's making repairs, whether it's replacing fences, additional landscaping. So that is something that the CPPS board is working on. As you know, we do have 2 members of the council that also serve on that board as ex officios. So it has not gone without any attention. So we have been working on it. A couple of the items that have been brought up are certainly things we can direct staff to take care of, as far as some of the flower bed cleanups and cleanouts. Some of that just as our learning curve. Those are not things we have taken care of in the past. So if there's questions, I'll certainly be happy to answer them from the council, but just wanted to give you a quick update on that. Again, at this point, we have both the full-time position and the full-time director open. I hope to fill the full-time director fairly soon. We may have to reassess the full-time position. Obviously, we're looking at budget and impacts like everybody else, but that's not a decision that's been made yet. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, we'll move on to the discussion of the MARC fiscal year project.
As you know, about every 2 years, the Mid-America Regional Council does a call for projects. We generally refer to this as the STP, or the Surface Transportation Program. We currently are still in the 21-22 year, and as you know, that is the year we're funded for the Riverview Crossroads project. So we already have that project approved and in place. So as we move forward, we were looking at what we should do next. They have changed the process. So you see a timeline here. So they've just opened up the call for projects. They will go live with their application website on April 30th. So they're changing the process and how we submit these. And then the first step is by May 29th, we have to submit a pre-application. The pre-application kind of outlines what the project is, kind of an overall budget, a more summary of the project. Those will then be assessed by the MARC staff as they typically do on projects. And then they will kind of do an initial rank scoring as we understand this new process. So I think we're all still learning a little bit. And they will also get from the other committees. So there's committees that look at active transportation, bicycling, walking, things of that nature. There's groups that look at air quality, et cetera, and so forth. And so they all review these and give them some kind of ranking or scoring just to have input. Based on that and the input that we get, then we will submit a final application. Gives us an opportunity to correct or update any information that we may not have initially submitted. And as you see, those will be due in late August, early September. And then we'll go through what's kind of the typical process. In our case, the STP committee of Kansas will get together. Though there's a limited amount of money. There's always 2 to 3 times more projects than there are dollars. And so those get scored and ranked and until we get to a final recommendation that goes through the TTPC, which is the Total Transportation Planning Committee, which Councilman Adams is a co-chair of that right now. And then it goes to the final MARC board, which Mayor McTaggart is on the board of directors there. Not that gives them, actually, I think they probably have to recuse themselves on our applications, but just so you know that that's the process. Considering that we have a pretty significant road project in right now, we scored kind of right at the edge. There was some additional funding. We really don't have another project that I would say is plan ready to put forward. So our suggestion for this round is to really look more at the kind of the alternative transportation mode. And if you can pull up the next slide, Zach. So what we're proposing is a project that we've had in place. And I know it's a little hard to see, but if you look at Blake Street, so our suggestion would be to put in for a project that would add sidewalk / trail. We've still got to work on those details, but a connector that would take from the town center site all the way into the park. You know, as you know, if you've ever gone down there until we've been in this lockdown mode, the people from the nursing home, the high rise, and some of those neighborhoods often go to and from the park. And right now, their only options to walk in the street. So we would be proposing a sidewalk linkage that would go on the north side of Blake Street, connect with the existing sidewalks by the high rise and go all the way into the park. And then that would connect with the existing trail system that's in place that's inside the park, comes down Betts Creek, and then goes over to the Riverfront Park, and then ultimately up to about the baseball fields towards the community center, which was all in our original plan. And then you also see to the kind of your lower right, it says recent trail project, which that's the one that's done with the money through the Fastenal project. So they're building that as part of their project. We think that this is probably about a $400,000 project. Right now, about a third of that would have to come from the city. Again, they pay for construction costs, but they don't pay for the engineering or any right-of-way acquisitions or easement acquisitions. We don't think there'd be much in the areas of easement acquisitions because there's easements along those roads now. And so we think that'd be fairly limited. And so that would keep those kind of costs down. So that is kind of our suggestion to move forward. I know that there's other road projects out there, but again, you're talking $5 and $6 million road projects, and we just don't have them in the pipeline to really move forward. This is one we had submitted previously, but they really weren't focusing on allowing sidewalks for these kind of projects in the past. And there was a lot of push that these kind of projects should be eligible and should get some special scoring or consideration. So we think this would be a good time to do this. We don't necessarily need an action, but just wanted to bring it forth to the council to let you know what our plans are. We will have to come back at prior to the application or sometime during the process for a resolution of support. And wanted to kind of get this out there. If this was, you know, completely not something that anybody wanted to pursue, then now would be a good time to talk about it. Or if there's certain concerns, we certainly can, you know, start that discussion. So it's really just to bring it forward to the council, see if there's comments.
Mike, this is Chuck Adams. This is something we've talked about for quite a few years, is making a loop of a trail throughout the town, so there would be a completed route. So yeah, I like it. I think it's going to be it'd be a great addition.
The other thing we may incorporate with this, because Blake Street is fairly wide, we may also look at an on-street dedicated bike lane. So it wouldn't necessarily be with walls, etc. But you've seen those in other cities where they'll take a portion of the paved area and dedicate that kind of for bicyclists. So you can separate bicycling from the walking traffic in lieu of a 10-foot wide trail. So that's kind of the thought process here, is that we'd probably use a more traditional sidewalk with a on-street bike lane on one side of the road. That's kind of the general play right now.
Hey, Mike, I just had a quick question. Did we have any reports done already that would be usable for 98th Street or 94th Street that were needing some work? And would those qualify for this sort of application or not?
They would qualify. We did put money into, as far as our bond program, we put I don't remember the exact number. I'm going to say around $250,000 for preliminary engineering for 98th Street from basically Kansas Avenue to the city limits to the north of Riverview. That is in there. We could submit, and we could submit more than one project. It is in the KC 2050 plan. We certainly can submit it as well. We probably, it will score okay, but not having as much planning and not having the right of ways already acquired, some of those might make it challenging. And the thing is, it's a submittal time, but we have enough information. We could probably submit it as well. Ultimately, we probably get down, what they've done in the past is make everybody limit down to one project or one preferred project, and you start looking at scoring criteria. So certainly can do more than one. 98th Street is certainly one of the ones we put in the 2050 plan. It's somewhat funding and funding and timing. I would anticipate that is also a multi-million-dollar project to do.
Yeah, the committee has really made it pretty clear that planning and preparation and getting the project down the road a little ways is very important in the application process. They've actually put a little bit more of the responsibility up front that they really didn't have in the past. And we have had discussions about possibly putting smaller organizations at a disadvantage, because we cannot afford to do planning like an Overland Park or like a Kansas City, Missouri would do, which they will be taking into consideration. But it does need to have some pretty significant movement and process through it to really have a whole lot of weight in the scoring session.
Okay, that makes sense. I really like the idea of the Blake Street project. I just think maybe it would be worth moving toward an application on the streets that we already have some surveys or reviews or motion in progress for. And then if we need to cut back later, at least we have the option to pull it if we need to, instead of having to put it off for a couple of more years. If everybody else would be on board with that, just to have the ball rolling. So if we need to stop it, we can, but so we don't miss a deadline.
We can certainly, at our meeting on the 11th, which gives us time before the pre-application deadline, come back with kind of a concept. I mean, not a concept plan, but kind of a concept of what we think the overall would be to do 98th Street. I mean, again, we know we have money set aside to do concept planning. And by concept planning, it's really what we did on 102nd, where we go through and we kind of look at the topo, the alignments, what easements would be needed, and prepare documents that could be used for right-of-way acquisition. That's kind of what we budgeted to do through our bond program, with the intent, really was the intent of those dollars then being used to put together what's necessary to make application at a future year. So that's doable. And again, we can come back at the May 11th meeting and provide some additional information. But I still think that this particular project just will, in two ways. I think it'll fare well because it's an area where there's been a lot of discussion by the committees. So Kansas and Missouri have separate STP committees, even though they ultimately go up the chain through TTPC and then ultimately the board of directors. But they're two separate pools of dollars, federal dollars. Kansas and Missouri treat them a little bit different. But there's been a lot of support for this. And then I think just from a financial standpoint, it's a project that we should be able to do, and I say that fairly easily, probably without having to issue debt, because our match would probably be in the 125 to 150,000 range versus $2 or $3 million range. So that was part of the thinking on this. Is it's a smaller project and also
it's a more doable one currently. Yeah.
Right. That's the thinking behind it. But we'll come back at the next meeting as well with 98th Street and some concepts. And again, we can submit them through the first round, and it may score so low that it's always dependent on what else is out there. But I think we also have to think about the long-term financial pieces and other things we obviously have going on as it relates to dollars and cents. So just wanted to get it on the table for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
If we're ready to move on, we have come to the advisory reports.
Yeah, I guess I would, our time has been probably the biggest thing on advisory right now, as we continue to move through this COVID-19 process. Everybody, it kind of followed the normal model for emergency management. So, phase one is generally response. So you had whatever activity, disaster happen, and you're kind of in a full response mode. And then you're kind of moving into recovery, and then you get back into planning and future mitigation. So how do you mitigate for the future? So we're now kind of moving, I think, in some respects into the kind of the response and somewhat planning. So internally, from our standpoint, from the city standpoint, the big things that come up for us is in May is court. And as the state order goes away, some of the things that the court were given relief on also go away with that. And I think that the general consensus that it's unlikely that the governor will extend her order past the May 3rd date. There may be pockets, but a general statewide stay-at-home order is probably not going to happen. I think we'll hear more this week. So with that taken into consideration, Court is a big area for us, so we've met with the judge and the prosecutors and other people around the court, and we will be literally having 6 court dates in the month of May. We will be limiting the size of those dockets. We had one docket, 300 and almost 360 cases on it, which a normal court day for us is about 200, and it's a madhouse. So we've broken that down over a series of days. We will be using the community center going forward. So it was something we were already working on. So I kind of tasked Zach and told him no more court at City Hall. So it was difficult enough before, and this adds to it. So we will be putting into place a system whereby people will come, they'll check in, and then we'll only let a certain number into the court at a time. We're going to implement a temperature system, so we'll check their temperature. There will be a small questionnaire. You know, have they had any of these symptoms? Have they, you know, traveled somewhere, et cetera? They then will be screened like we normally do, and then go into the courtroom, conduct their business, and then they'll leave the building through a separate exit, which is something we don't have the ability to do now. So that will be, our first date is the 7th of May, then we do the 8th of May, then we do the 15th, then the 21st, 22nd, and then the 29th, I think, the 28th, 29th. So it will be very busy for the court, but they're smaller dockets, so we think that's a system that will work well. So along with that, on the public works side, we've already been transitioning each of the weeks, last week and then this week and then into next week, where we will bring forth our people into full shift. So they've been working partial shifts, though everybody in the city has been compensated fully during this time. So no furloughs, no cut and pay, no use of a federal program to give people 2/3 sick leave. We've made that agreement early on. We're going to take care of our people. I think they appreciate that. And so Public Works will be basically back at kind of a full staffing model by next week. City Hall, we're doing the same kind of transition. So right now we're kind of at about a 2/3 staffing level as far as people in the office. Doesn't mean they're not working, but physically in the office, we're working some extended hours. So, you know, like our finance director is working until 8 o'clock at night because he's like me, he enjoys evening times. Zach may come in at 7 o'clock in the morning because he's used to getting up bright and early at 5 o'clock and doing the things that he needs to take care of. So we've spread that out. We anticipate right now that, so the first day there's no order is Monday the 4th. We intend to keep City Hall closed that day so we can get all our people back in, settled in, back into some semblance of normal on that day, set up some of the procedures we'll do for people coming in and out of City Hall to limit numbers, et cetera. And then the week, the rest of the week, we'll operate an 8 to 1, so 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. through that Friday. And then starting on the 11th, we'll probably be back to some level of normal hours. That is also May 11th would be the first council meeting that we anticipate doing in person. And you can expect that we'll probably implement some of the same kind of protocols there. So likely we will check the temperature of every person that comes in, including us and the council and us and staff, so that we're all on the same page and implementing those same kind of deals. We'll probably rearrange the council room for those next couple of meetings so we can continue some level of social distancing. So we're making those changes gradually as we go forward. Obviously, we don't know all the things that will come up or may happen, but we're kind of looking out 2 and 3 weeks and making assumptions of what we know today. Obviously, something changes, then we will change along with that. So that's really the focus from kind of the COVID-19 report. I think you all see most of the other stuff on the news about regionally. I think the one thing I would say is that there's been reported several times inaccurately that the core 4 group has all agreed to going to May 15th for a stay-at-home order, and that is not factual. The only place that's done a stay-at-home extension to May 15th is the city of Kansas City, Missouri. So I can't say there won't be, but that is not a decision that's been made by the 3 counties, or certainly the 2 counties in Kansas. So just to let you know that. Besides that stuff, we still have normal things going on. Probably the biggest has been the Riverview Crossroads. We're into that right-of-way acquisition time, and so that's always a fun time. And I know that I, just kind of gave you all an overview of the process and how that works. So we continue to work through that. I think overall it's going about as we would expect, appropriately, and that's kind of that. We have a lot of smaller projects we kind of need to get out the door, but it's been a challenge without the Public Works Director. And again, I hope to fill that position. I think we're down to 2 candidates at this point, and probably one slightly rising to the top, and we'll be doing some final reviews and information, and hopefully I'll make that decision in the next couple of weeks so we can get them onboarded. I will say the candidates we have all have pretty extensive public works experience, so I think we're fortunate with the candidates. At that, I think I can't think of anything else, but I'll be happy to answer questions as we go through to the council or others.
Thank you, Mike. Zach, do you have anything?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Chief Mathies.
Good evening, everyone. Our report is, first and foremost, everyone's been safe and healthy. We appreciate the fire department for using their decontamination efforts over at our building and through our cars. That's really been beneficial. What we're seeing is somewhat a repeat of last week, and ever since everyone started staying home, we're seeing just our battery cases and family violence cases are pretty steady. And we're also seeing a little uptick in our kind of aggressive drivers. We've had a few DUIs that we've had to deal with. And though that's somewhat common, it seems to be a little bit of uptick. We're certainly seeing the speeders and things. Our transition would be that we'll be moving towards May 3rd as our Sunday's a good day for us in our scheduling to move towards more normalcy. Some of the policies that we have for social distancing and dealing with the public will remain in place for some time. We kind of have a 60-day window that we're going to be evaluating where we're at and how our things are going. So that's what we're doing over at the police department.
Thank you, Mark. Chief Whittam.
Good evening, everybody. A few things. JT Sullivan, our newest fire paramedic, started work last week. Come up about a month early to help us out from Texas. Him and his wife are returning back to the KC area, so there'll be a new face once we get everybody back to having actual face-to-face meetings. We'll bring him in one night when he's on duty and introduce him as we've done in the past. He has 7 years of experience working in Independence and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then down in the Austin, Texas area. So we were very fortunate to find him on our last recruitment drive through Indeed, which was very beneficial. Like I said, he is on duty doing a 2-week orientation process. He'll start riding in the primary paramedic spot on A shift starting on Sunday. We really have no other alternative plans to move forward yet with staffing because we've kept our same staffing model throughout the epidemic. However, as Chief Mathies alluded, we are spending a couple hours each day decontaminating vehicles for the city, public works vehicles, police cars, the police department, city hall, public works building, the community center on top of the fire station and all of our vehicles. And we've got a set rotation that we're going to keep following through and going forward as everything starts to come back to some sort of whatever the new normal is. that we will be treating the city hall each night after there's a court date, so it can settle overnight and be cleaned and scrubbed for court the next day to try to reduce that exposure. This weekend, the city hall will be treated again pretty hard and heavy, since we're going to start looking at bringing back a more robust workforce starting next week as well. So that's 4 or 5 hours every day that people don't see behind the clock or behind the curtains that we're doing as part of the COVID-19 response. Also, with that, we cannot burn off, and I apologize, we didn't get the leaves burned off at the cemetery, but I got to have dry leaves, and I can't have green brush to burn in the brush pile. And I apologize again that I had to go up to the flagpole to figure out the parts, get all the parts on order to get them in, and then had to wait for weather to cooperate, because that's a 45-foot lightning rod, and I'm going to put a 77-foot lightning rod up even next to it. So we have to have almost sunny, no cloudy days to eliminate that threat to get it in there. But the flagpole is repaired. We will start work back on the Stony Point Cemetery eventually, sometime later in the summer, as we really get more stabilized after this pandemic. But Friday, we're going to have 2 part-timers come in, and they're going to do the ditch cleaning that we've done every year along Edwardsville Drive. And then finally, that being said, to close up the question we had from the last council meeting, Councilmember Shriver had asked about the number of responses to Bonner Springs for EMS. Since the first of this year, we've made 14 responses to Bonner for EMS related calls alone, and they have come into Edwardsville 9 times to help us on EMS calls. So we're really not a huge disparity in our run call volume. Other than that, Ben has advised me he didn't have anything to bring forward right now, so we will see you guys on May the 11th. Unless you need something, you can call me.
Thank you, both of you. It's certainly an important function of the city to have you, both of you departments, the police and the fire, functioning at such a high level, and we do appreciate all your hard work. So moving on then, Public Works. Nothing to report.
Well, nothing really to report. Like I said, from a staffing model, we're getting back in. We're going to keep Gary on part-time as long as we can. That is the gentleman that is in nursing school now. So obviously his schedule has changed since the nursing programs and schools aren't able to do some of the hands-on things that they were able to do. And from what we hear from the calls, it's probably for the community colleges to get back into those things, it probably will be their fall semester before they get into some of those hands-on things. So whether it's auto mechanics or nursing or things of that nature, it's a timing issue of starting classes, and typically those summer classes get started here in the next few weeks. And so I think mainly what we're hearing is they're probably going to stay with some of the online format over the summer hours. I would note that our guys have been working with the school, making sure we have the tent set up, traffic control every day for the food program, that's set up. There was an addition from
Third Space.
Third Street. What is it?
Third Space Coffee.
Third Space Coffee. I had street right. That is now has added frozen meals in on Fridays, and I don't know if they're doing it every Friday or every other. I think they're doing now every Friday. And then also, as part of what we're doing with the court, our guys were at the community center making sure all the pulling cable and making sure we'd have internet access internally. And so they're doing those other projects as well, which we expect them to do. So they're staying busy, mowing a lot of grass. So I know it's not the highest priority thing, but our trails and parks are getting a lot of use, and we think it's important that we keep those maintained so that those that are using them right now are, have a safe place to go, and that the parks are clean, etc. So they have been doing, kind of a behind the scene, great job. Continue to be safe. That's something we've been stressing across all of our groups is safety. Do what they need to do to be safe, stay safe. We haven't had any individuals internally that's had to really address the COVID-19. We hope to keep it that way, other than one employee whose spouse was positive tested, and therefore that person had to stay home for the 14 days, never became symptomatic. And I don't believe anybody else in that person's family became symptomatic. So again, Public Works is out there on the front line doing their stuff just as well. And I think all our departments have worked really well together during this time to help each other out as needed. And we appreciate the hard work our folks are doing. So that's Public Works.
Thank you, Mike. I know it's a difficult time, but you certainly have been keeping this city running quite well. Thank you. Okay, Lisa, do you have anything?
I do not have anything.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with Councilman Stites.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you, Chuck. Margaret?
Yes, I would like to add some comments regarding the cemetery. I know that this transition from the previous cemetery board to what we have now, when we combine the Parks and Recs and the cemetery board, it's been a rocky transition, I guess, for lack of better words. We've met, and then the COVID erupted. So we're just getting to know each other. And personally, I've sat on the Parks and Recs board for several years. I'm learning about the cemetery board and the cemetery, how it's run, what has happened in the past, what many members of the cemetery board in the past did. And so with the transition with the Public Works Director, who we don't have, and a Public Works position, I know this has been extremely difficult for, I know a lot of residents that do go by the cemetery, and a lot of residents and or people who do have a family member laid to rest up there. I would like to comment that I don't know if things did kind of get built up there, and now the flagpole is fixed, which I'm glad. But if the Public Works, we could get somebody up there on a weekly basis. I'm not quite sure, Mike. I know you said you want to talk about that, maybe the restructure of the Public Works position. But between the cemetery, Parks and Recs board, and the city, I think we need to learn from each other what's going to get done. I think Zach made the comment, or Mike made the comment on what has been done, what still needs to be done. So I guess my final comment is the cemetery should always be at the top of the list, and it's one of our greatest assets in the city, and the respect that needs to be paid up there to get the job done needs to happen. So I know we'll have some further discussion with this when the Public Works Director is hired, and we're just going to still, I don't know how I quite want to word this, still get a better schedule down, for lack of better words. So, and as far as the police and fire departments, thank you all for all your hard work, especially the fire department. See, didn't know all your firemen and all the staff was cleaning everything. I'm glad you told us that. I'm glad you have your men doing that. Thank you very much for helping keep everybody clean and safe. And for all the staff at City Hall, everybody's hard work. These are very trying times for everybody. So thank you all for all your hard work. Stay safe for everybody. That's all I have.
Thank you, Margaret. Garrett?
Mayor, if I just might add, just
Sure.
for Ms. Driver. So we do have we have a person in the cemetery at least one day every week now, just so you know. So the part-time person, that is partly their primary function is to be up there. You know, they may not need 8 hours every day, but that they are up there to ensure that, you know, the trash isn't overflowing or there's not, you know, damage or things of that nature, in addition to what's being done by the private contractor. So I may have not, just making sure I may have not been clear, but we are there in the cemetery. There's just some things we may not have known, quite honestly, just some transition, landscaping type of things that we're just still trying to understand what was done and when was it done and by who was it done, and so we can transition that over. So I just wanted to add that into the conversation.
Thank you, Mike. That makes sense because I know the knowledge transfer, I assume that did happen sometime between December, January, from what the board members did do, and there's a few board members still on the board. So no, that we'll just all get on common ground about that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Zach, and this is just to, you know, expand on some of your points. It has been a learning process for both the members of the new CPPS board and for staff, just the amount of work that the volunteer positions did prior to the city taking a more active role in what we're doing now. And that I think your comments about, you know, COVID-19 kind of throwing a kink in our timeline were well stated. If you coming in out of that first meeting that we had in March, there was a lot of enthusiasm for work in both the parks and the cemetery, and a lot of it was going to kick off in April and May, and it's unfortunately those have put slowed down a little bit, but it is that board's intention, it is the city staff's every intention to follow up on enthusiasm from that meeting and to continue the work in both the parks and the cemetery.
Thank you, Zach.
Okay, now Garrett, go ahead.
The cemetery, I think, will be replaced or fixed, will be taken care of. I'm sure of that. And we do get the comments from the public, and, you know, there's things that go out on Facebook and so forth. It's not a matter that the city council and the city staff doesn't care about that cemetery. I think there's a lot of underlying situations that have come up right now with the COVID thing, and nobody knows what we're supposed to do about it or anything. And I did go up there today, and maybe the contractors that are doing the mowing, maybe they need to wait till it gets a little bit drier before they mow. And maybe they're trying to go through there a little bit too fast. There are some concerns of mine. I walked it quite a bit today, and there's graves or markers that are knocked down that need to be put back up, and there's graves that need to be settled in and filled in and seeded. And I realize that the weather has really caused a problem on that, but I think if the public would be patient, I think this is going to remedy itself. I think the new board that we've got coming on will really study on this and really work on it. And, you know, I'm there for volunteering if we ever need that also. So that's what I'm going to say about the cemetery. I'd like to comment on what Carolyn was saying. I do think 98th Street and 94th Street definitely needs some kind of work. I've driven up there several times in the last couple of months, and it's pretty horrible. I don't know if we need to do a little bit of grading on that, maybe try and put some chip and seal on it or something, you know, work the drainage on the sides of it or something, but it's a horrible set of streets, and they really do need to have some work. I think I'll let that just kind of stand in Mike's ear there a little bit so he can kind of think about that. I kind of might have surprised him with that somewhat. I was going to ask the chiefs, if either one of the chiefs or both of the chiefs, if they could give us a real quick summary of how the COVID has affected Edwardsville as far as people being affected. And I know that we had one death, I think, related to it, but is it getting better? Is it stabilizing? Is it getting worse? Can you give any kind of a report on that, either Chief Wenham or Chief Mathis. Either one of you, or not.
Tim, I think Tim from the EMS side or Ben probably has a better handle on that particular, like the medical side. One of our policies is we let them do their job as far as, going into those places. They're well prepared, emergency, medical service. So we've taken a kind of, we'll take it under advisement call. So I think other than us watching the dashboard for Wyandotte County, which shows our statistics for our zip code, which includes, of course, KCK. That's really where we're seeing it from the police perspective. We're not seeing that maybe that Ben or Tim on the fire side may see. So I'd yield to them.
Sure. So this is Ben. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ben.
Okay. So the situation in Edwardsville is really good compared to the surrounding areas. I would say that due to our low population, it's hard to tell if we're at the peak or if we're on our downhill slide, but I would say that the workload is definitely not increasing right now.
Okay, that's kind of what I wanted to hear, and just in a nutshell, just people do ask, and I like to be able to say something to somebody with some kind of knowledge about it. So I appreciate that, Ben. Thank you very much.
I'd say we're fortunate and it's well controlled right now.
Oh, thank you so much, Mayor. That's all.
Yeah, Mr. Malott, I would the dashboard that Wyandotte County put up, it's been over a month ago, and it continues to get added to and updated. And you can go on there and see zip codes. You can see now age types things. Obviously, our zip code is fairly large. I think the last item I saw was we had 20 confirmed cases in the zip code, compared to some of the other zip codes where you have 200 or so. I think this morning there was the last number was probably in the 470s, I think, or something like that for the county as a whole. 500, if somewhere in that range for the county. So relatively speaking, that's a small portion. Again, we know we've had one death. I don't know that there's been any others. They don't report it unless there's at least 5 in any particular zip code. They are supposed to start adding to that report information really about some of these hot spots. So when you look at the total numbers and you start looking at, I think we've had 51 deaths as of this morning in the county as a whole. But you look at, unfortunately, a facility like the Riverbend facility, where you had, at least 28 deaths there, and you have at least 130, 40 confirmed cases that are related to that facility. You start to see, and so I think they're going to start reporting on some of these key areas where they're seeing these larger outbreaks. I think you'll probably see some spiking in case numbers because testing is increasing. So they hope to move to about 250 tests a day, or the capability to do 250 tests a day in the county. And so obviously as those tests go up, if the percentage of total tests follows the same line, it's been about 10%. So of all the cases that have been done, and so far all those cases have been related to patients that have symptoms, right? So they had to have one of the 4 big symptoms. Now they've expanded that, but you saw about a 10% test to confirmed case. So, for every 100 cases you had about, or 100 tests, you had about 10 positive cases. That's kind of been the general trend, but I think you'll probably see the number of you're probably going to see the number of testing go up, so cases will go up, but the percentage associated. So will it continue to be 10% of total cases, or will that percentage comes down? And I think that's what's being looked at more and more, and also trying to look at it on a more detailed area. So smaller areas is what the county on that dashboard looks at. So I would recommend people continue to follow that. I think it's a good resource. It's kept up to date at least once, generally twice a day. So it's a good resource for the public.
And to close out, Mr. Merlot, in reality, overall, COVID response for us is stable. It's been kind of alluded to, as alluded to the last meeting. We are sufficiently staffed or efficiently equipped with PPE, the proper personal protective equipment, and now with the foggers and getting into all the vehicles and all of the other city properties, we're trying to get in front of it and stay in front of it instead of trying to play catch up, which a lot of places got caught with. Again, a lot of that goes back to Ben walking into the office and saying, boss, we need to look at buying this because we're going to need it. And then finally, in closure, within our 3 nursing facilities, we do not have a hot spot, unlike the rumors running around or some of the other rumors running around that the mobile home park is a hot spot. We really have no one trouble area that we're seeing a large influx of people that have got COVID symptoms.
That's what we like to hear, and I think that's what the city likes to hear, and I think that will attest to your professionalism along with Mathias and the whole staff, all the police officers, firefighters, and everything. I want them to know that they are really appreciated by all of us. So thank you very much for that report. That's all I've got, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. Carolyn?
Hi guys, I had just a couple of things. One is, I don't want to keep harping on it too much, but would it be possible, Mike, for the burn pile and the leaves to be taken care of at the cemetery before Memorial Day?
We will do our best. I will get with the chief and see what we can do. The leaves, quite honestly, I think probably they've been there for so long, and as you know, when you leave leaves piled up, they probably just get too wet to burn. I had written down a note to myself to see if there is a company or that has large back trucks for that stuff. I know some cities have contracts with companies where everybody pushes their leaves out into the street and then they vacuum them up. I'm just not sure what kind of equipment that is. We used to have a small machine that we could clean out a small area where it just vacuums it up and kind of chops it up and then, puts it out as almost like a mulch. But we'll research that. As far as the brush piles, if we can get some drier weather, I think that's really what we've been looking for. We can segment out new things that we cut from old things that we cut and set those in maybe a different pile. But there was quite a bit just from winter and from things falling a couple of weeks ago when we were up there just picking stuff up. So we'll make every attempt to have that ready by Memorial Day. I think that was also the goal of the CPPS was to, they really wanted to have a big cleanup day to try to address a lot of that by the Memorial Day, holiday. Obviously, not to beat on the same thing, all of our schedules have gotten modified in the last 60 days. So, but we'll see if there's some alternatives that we can put in place to address those issues as much as possible.
And then are we still doing the citywide cleanup, or are we pushing that date a little bit? Do you have any updates on that?
I'm going to let Zach hit that one because I'm not totally sure. We haven't had much discussion on it, but I think we'll be pushing it because we also tie it with the hazardous cleanup days. So, but Zach may have more information.
Yes, John Blessing, our account manager over at Waste Management, pretty much at the onset of some of these changes in procedures, reached out to me and the other communities about putting off any of these larger scale events with their equipment that's going to involve their people. So the short answer to your question is we are still planning on holding a citywide cleanup event. It will not take place on the third Saturday in May, as is typical. We've not re-engaged in discussion with Waste Management at this point on when to reschedule that, but I'm hoping for midsummer, maybe before the end of June.
Thank you. The last thing that I wanted to bring up is a task force. I was really discouraged recently in finding that not any consideration was given to Edwardsville in the new Restart YCO task force. The mayor of KCK and the UG said he gathered 25 people from all over Wyandotte County to represent business owners and government and just the community in putting a plan together to reopen Wyandotte County. And I just thought it was worth mentioning that we did not have any representation, whether it was elected officials or business people, in that 25-person task force. And I did email Mayor Alvey about that, but again, wanted to reiterate that I was really discouraged that we had no voice at the table there and we had no representation. And that other than thanking our people, there are a lot of adjustments that have had to be made recently, people working from home or weird hours, and then our first responders who have to work the same hours or sometimes more hours. And then we also have people in our community who aren't getting a paycheck at all right now, and we need to keep those folks in mind right now. But I'm really excited and happy to see how our community is pulled together and great things going on within Edwardsville that are is a statement to our people in our community. So thanks guys for that. And that's all I've got for today.
Thank you, Carolyn. Chuck?
Yes, everybody's mentioned something I was going to mention. But one thing, listening to everybody talk and all the updates and the reports and everything, the word that comes to mind is teamwork. Yeah, I'm really proud of how everybody has come together and working towards the same goal. And I think it's really a testament to our department heads and Mike's leadership and the mayor and the council. But I just really appreciate everybody pulling the wagon in the same direction. It means an awful lot to the employees and the people working, and also to the citizens. To see the unity is a great testament. So thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you all. Carolyn, I will make a comment. I did give a name. I did give the Mayor Alvey that we had a individual who had agreed to serve on that restart committee. Mike, you'll have to give him his name. Give his name. He is the manager at Herc Jones. But I did notify the mayor that I had a name, and I did not ever receive any response back from him. And that committee is already in session. So. Pardon me. That's all on that. I have nothing further to add to the comments already made. So with that, we are adjourned.
No, Mayor.
Mayor, this is Councilman Stites. And,
go ahead.
I did think of something that I wanted to make sure. And as I look across the board and I see the folks, the citizens that have taken time out of their night to join us in this meeting, I think it's, I like to see that. I like that we have more people that are getting involved in our meetings, and I'd like to see them continue to be at our meetings even after we get past this virtual meeting. I'd like to thank them and hopefully see them attending once we get back. So thank you for the folks that took time out to be at the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Chuck, thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.
No, Mayor, this is Mike. We still have to go to executive session.
Oh, that's right.
I would like to make a motion that we recess into executive session in accordance with KSA 75-431-9B2 for consultation with the city attorney which would be deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship related to the Village South at Edwardsville, the Edwardsville project. It is now 8:10. Are you thinking 8:40, Michael?
I was just going to ask, I see Tyler's on the call. Do you have Tyler? Is 30 minutes sufficient or a little less than that? I think it is.
He said
Tyler.
he thinks that it is, and I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go in executive session. What was the time on that? I heard the time, the amount of minutes.
8:40.
Pardon?
8:40.
8:40, okay. We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
KR,
Yes.
Malat.
Yes.
All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss the folks who are not on the call and pause the recording so we can continue to go into executive session. So that would be, and a lot of folks are already hopping off now. So give me 1 second and I will let you know when we are good to go.